Hey everyone, welcome back to Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales for the battlefield of business. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, we believe that hope is not a sales strategy. And so for many years now, we've been coming to you with this podcast, with the live stream, to help you remove hope from how you sell. And course of these episodes, we've been able to have on guests every single time, guests that have been Hall of Fame speakers, best-selling authors, folks that are out there leading national and international sales teams, folks who understand that hope does not have to play into how we sell or how we serve. Now, maybe you're wondering, hey, Sean, Bulletproof Selling, I think I get the concept. You could maybe convince me that hope plays a role in some people's sales processes, but man, I'm having the best year ever. Kicking and screaming here through my revenue. It's just, you're having a great year, man. How does hope still play into my life? Well, even if you're doing great, the reason that hope could potentially factor into what you're doing is that hope is insidious. It happens when we simply coast. It happens when we're ready to let the status quo be the status quo. And that's why, as a war correspondent attached to U.S. Marines in the U.S. Marine Corps, my job was to study how these men and women across the U.S. Marine Corps, the Navy SEAL units, the Green Beret units, the Air Force pararescue people, everybody that was out there, the highest performers in the military. These folks, I mean, they're having the best years of their lives too, right? They're kicking and screaming through their mission plans. They still understood that hope can creep in every time that we're willing to accept that this is the best that we can do. That's where hope creeps in. So here on this show, every single episode, we identify where hope might be entering the plans of the salespeople that we're speaking with, and we build a system that you can use as a salesperson, whether you're a team of one or whether you're leading a team of 1,000, to remove that piece of hope from your sales process. And over the course of these episodes, some of my favorite guests are the ones that we don't have to convince them that hope is not a strategy because they were taught it. It was sometimes beaten into them in the U.S. military and foreign service militaries. We've been able to have folks on from a variety of countries' militaries so far, folks that are leading sales teams today. So today's guest, former Army medic, which is very cool. So these were the people responsible for patching holes when folks like me would get holes on the battlefield. But today is leading a sales team in a pretty unique industry. They're selling something that they sometimes have to follow up on. I mean, that sounds like pretty standard stuff in sales, isn't it? But they have to follow up on it in a very unique way. So we're going to talk today about the value of what happens after someone says yes. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome onto the show Army veteran and current EVP of Sales of H-Wave, Mr. Matt Rose. Matt, welcome to Bulletproof Selling. Good
morning. Pleasure to be here.
Good morning, sir. So first, I need to hear about your time as an Army medic because that is super cool. In the Marine Corps, of course, all of our folks came from the Navy. We call them corpsmen. They were dearly beloved. They were the folks that, we went out of our way to take care of. So I'm curious to hear about your time in the Army there and then really how you transitioned that into sales. So many people say the military, not the best breeding ground for training for civilians, but I know that you've taken what you learned there and really applied it into how you lead your team. So talk to us a little bit about your background, how you ended up in sales.
Sure. Being in the Army as a medic was probably at the time one of the more difficult things that I had taken on in my early adult life. And as you kind of get beaten down before they build you back up. And I think that experience, while at the time was very challenging, has built a foundation of strength and perseverance throughout my entire rest of my adult life and career, personally and professionally. So I was a medic first and was trained at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, where it's always about 95 degrees with 99% humidity and fire ants everywhere. But moved on and was attached to the Big Red 1 at Fort Riley, Kansas, and had a really great career with the Army, and didn't think for one moment that I'd really ever end up in sales. And it all kind of happened as a matter of my stepdad being treated with an H-Wave device about 22 years ago. He had suffered from lymphatic throat cancer, and the recovery from that was pretty significant. And in my time in the Army, I'd gotten to see a lot of really cool technology and understood how the body worked. And when I saw this little black box at the time, looked like a kind of a 1980s CB radio at the time when I first started working for the company, I had a lot of skepticism. And I have to tell you that the one treatment that he got with this device was what I would call miraculous.
Hmm.
And that was the inspiration for me to reach out to the company and say, hey, how does this work? What can I do to be involved? And kind of by accident, I found myself in a sales position in a virgin territory in Ventura, California, and built a career from there. I've been at H-Wave now about 22 years.
Nice. That is a story. So you family connection to the company that you're working for now, and of course, it's still in medicine. So you're able to transfer a little bit of what you learned from the army. I'm curious about the thing that you sell because it's a little unique in that you're calling on people that probably don't currently have it, and they might agree to use it, but then that's where a lot of conversations tend to stall out. So talk to us a little bit about what that sales process looks like if it's done ideally. You call up somebody who recognizes the value, you send it over, they start using it. What does that look like in your industry?
Yeah, so it's an interesting sale. We work with prescribers, so physicians, advanced clinical practitioners, in some cases physical therapists on the federal side, and they might use our product or see clinical benefit for our product and then prescribe it for a patient, and then would be covered under insurance. So we're never actually selling on my team to the insurance company, who is actually the entity paying for it. Or when we're working with the VA, the VA might pay for it, but we're not working with the people who are actually quote unquote buying. So we have to position this as something of value from a clinical perspective, and then also provide value, especially on the civilian side, where it's going to be a benefit to them from a business perspective or from a clinical process perspective. The challenge is that we're going in and talking with clinicians and physicians, and we oftentimes get interest, right? But none of these clinicians or physicians necessarily have to use our product. They could probably practice medicine for the rest of their career and not use our product and get okay results for patients. So there's not a lot of internal demand. So we've got to create that interest and that demand, get a yes, and then we've got to implement a process so that it can make it easy for those providers to prescribe our product and then see results on their patients and make sure that they have visibility to all of the value pieces that we've intended to bring to their practices. So that's what might look like in a perfect world. Obviously,
Right,
there's a number of roadblocks that aren't necessarily navigated very well, and so we're constantly kind of working on that.
So let's talk about some of those roadblocks then, because the things that we can control, obviously the military taught us to identify the things in your control. Those are the things you can take action on. If somebody hears about the thing that you sell and they see the value in it and they say, great, that's awesome, I'm interested, but that's where the sale stops. And I know in a lot of times that's exactly what happens. So talk to me a little bit about where hope enters the picture for the salespeople on your team and for salespeople like them, because this is happening across multiple industries, I guarantee it. I get a lot of soft yeses, but if I don't do something after that, I'm really hoping that that prospect buys, calls me back, expresses interest, takes the next step essentially. So where do you see salespeople relying on hope in this sales process where you're responsible for generating interest and demand?
Right. It happens at a couple of different places, but the most common place is, we don't even get a lot of physicians or clinicians that say no to our product. It's very effective. We've got a lot of research. It provides an immediate effect on patients, so they can see it, and they've got interest. The challenge is the salesperson, as they're uncovering the gap or they're providing these interest points to the physicians and clinicians. They'll get that interest point and they say, yeah, this sounds really interesting, and I'm going to think about a couple of patients and send them over to you. And the sales rep, of course, walks out and they're doing the fist pump, and it's a premature fist pump, right? They're like, I killed it. And they call their manager and they're like, I just had the best meeting ever. And they said that they were going to send over a bunch of patients today. And of course, by the end of the week, nothing has happened. And so that's kind of the first pinch point, is failure to implement a process. So you're celebrating too early, hoping that the people who are interested are actually going to take all of the action and activity onto themselves and give you business out of the goodness of their hearts or out of their, exploding interest in our product. And that just honestly just does not happen. Well, I would say maybe it happens 1 out of 100. But
Yeah.
ultimately, you've got to get all of the key stakeholders involved. The physician or clinician might be the decision maker saying, yes, clinically, we're going to prescribe this product. But there might be a half dozen other people that are involved in executing on that order. And so we've got to get all of those key stakeholders involved. We want the physician or clinician to introduce us to those people so that there's that personal instruction from them, knowing that the right decision maker is making the call, and it's not just an overzealous rep coming in and talking with a surgery scheduler saying, yeah, all of your patients are going to get our product.
Yeah.
So, there has to be buy-in from all of the staff, and then understanding how each one of these practices work. And especially on the civilian side, they all do things differently. There's always
Yeah.
different positions and different titles and different responsibilities in all of these positions that are in these offices, and making sure that we've got an equally quality relationship with all of those people on the execution piece is so critical, and the prescriber taking action when necessary.
So let's build a sales system around this, because I know a lot of salespeople, they are counting on their prospects to be the ones to take action,
Right.
especially in a longer sales cycle where maybe there is a sample set over, or they have a trial period, or a lot of business models, operate like that. So if I'm counting on my prospect to be the one to take action, it's like taking the ball and putting it in their court. And as salespeople, that's something we tried not to do. It's something we were taught never do in the military. I never want to let my opponent take the initiative on me. I always want to be taking the initiative. So let's build a sales system that any salesperson can use to make sure that they're not relying on their prospects to take the next step, that we maintain control of that past the initial interest. So every system that we had in the military, every system that you had as a medic, it was built so that we could become more efficient, we could achieve more of our mission set. So each new system removes hope from that process. Same thing in sales. So we're trimming hope away. We use this acronym here, TRIM, as every new sales system build that we make. So the T in TRIM, Matt, is the trigger of this system. Just like you needed to know when you're assessing a patient, what do you do first, second, and third? And now when you're selling, what do you need to do first, second, and third? For this process, when do I need to trigger it? If I'm helping my customers and my prospects not have to take the next step, because that needs to be something that I own. Do I trigger this as soon as the sales process begins? Do I trigger it earlier when I'm even identifying the type of practices I'm reaching out to and I'm developing my ICP? Where would you want your salespeople to trigger a system to make sure that they're always maintaining the next step of this process?
And I think there's a lot of trigger mechanisms that could be initiated in the process, but I think certainly the first one is as you're uncovering the needs of the customer. From a clinical perspective, a lot depends on the type of practice we're calling on, or the type of specialty we're calling on. So the implementation process, or what we offer, might be different based on a pain medicine practice, or an orthopedic surgery practice, or a spine practice. So understanding the general needs of your customer, doing a little bit of research beforehand, having that trigger be in place, and then understanding, what we have to offer as you uncover some of these needs and gaps that particular physician or practitioner or practice might be experiencing.
Gotcha. So our trigger then is to understand a little bit about their business model, which in every industry, you're going to be reaching out to prospects that have different business models, even if they're in the same industry. So absolutely
Absolutely.
understanding what that looks like. So let's move past the trigger then, because now I know exactly when to trigger this system. I want to move into the R in this, which is making this a repeatable process. So this picks up at the point in sale where one of your potential customers says, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'll give that a try. And now we need to do a couple of things. We need to own the next steps as salespeople. We need to make sure we're identifying the stakeholders, determining what their version of success looks like so that I can get them bought in to using this product or service. So talk to me about the 4 or 5 or 6 steps that you would want your salespeople to walk through once they hear a yes.
Absolutely. For us, it's really about, and you hit the nail on the head. It's about identifying what is a win for the customer. And so we'll usually identify with a physician who says, yeah, I'm willing to give this a chance and I'm willing to prescribe this, but I really want to see some results. And so we'll ask the physician or the practitioner, we'll say, hey, if you were to choose a number of patients you needed to see results on in order to feel really confident about implementing a full process where this becomes the standard of care, how many patients would that be? Some orthopedic surgeons might say 5, pain management doctors might say 10. Whatever that number is, now you've locked in the initial goal, right? That first step. Then you're taking the next step and saying, great, who am I going to work with on your staff that can assist, or I can assist them in helping to identify, who these patients are going to be, how this is going to flow to us. Who would you like me to work with? And so identifying those key stakeholders. Once you've talked with those key stakeholders, then it's really about being of service to them, because now you're asking them to do something a little bit more than what they agreed to when they showed up to work today. And so making sure that those people feel really good about the process, really good about your level of service and commitment to them. And then, one of the things that we really do a lot of is talk about patient outcomes. If our product goes on a patient, our promise is that they see something really significant. We take people who are at 10 level pain and bring them to a 0. It's often in the VA, especially when we see patients, they come in, they're usually a little skeptical, and we apply the device, and patients oftentimes are brought to tears because they haven't found relief like they've found with our product. Or they'll get up out of a chair and say, I can actually walk without pain. So it's really interesting as we talk with people on staff to let them know what our commitment is to helping people, helping patients. Because at the end of the day, all of these people are there to help, right? The physician took the Hippocratic Oath, the workers' comp coordinator or the surgery scheduler, took that job because they had some interest in working with patients, because they want to provide some service to them so they can really see a better quality of life. So we really communicate that. And that's our promise to everybody on the staff, not just the physicians and clinicians. So we get a lot of buy-in from those people. And then we, kind of that final stage is we have to communicate back to the providers and the staff. And both of those groups, so it's not just the providers who are prescribing, but it's all of those key stakeholders. Hey, look at the outcomes we got for these patients. We're so excited to continue working with you to show you more results on those patients in the future. So it's really those major 3 steps. And I think that's really what, if every rep decided to repeatedly do that and be committed and persistent in that process, we could probably double the top and bottom line of the company.
Yeah, a lot of salespeople could, if they were using a process to work with the people and the stakeholders. It's something that a lot of salespeople try to avoid, actually, when they realize, oh, this deal is a little more complicated than I thought. It was a simple deal, but now it's a complex deal. I've got a multi-thread conversations with multiple stakeholders. That's too complicated, and they tend to chase easier pieces of business.
Right.
Unfortunately, it limits our ability to serve, because if I can take from a service-oriented perspective, because sales is about service, not just serve one person in an organization, but serve many, and the end user of what it is that I'm selling. Well, that's a super win. Like this is like 4th of July fireworks type of a win right here. So that's amazing. I love this idea. So if I've got a trigger, making it repeatable with some great steps, I want to move into the iron trim, which is making this improvable. What am I going to do month over month, quarter over quarter, to make sure that this process stays up to date with industry changes, with federal healthcare regulations, with all the things that could affect and adjust how I sell? What do you recommend your salespeople do to keep this system relevant?
That's a great question. One of the things that we've done to build as a key component of our culture is open line communication. We absolutely 100% rely every day of the week on the feedback we get from our sales team to feed up what they're observing on the boots on the ground. Because Unfortunately, I don't get to spend much time in the field anymore, even though it's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things to do. My regional sales directors, they get to see more of it, but they're not boots on the ground. They're from the 30,000-foot view. And so we have to rely on the people in the field to give us this feedback. And so we've created a number of open channels for communication in our organization, where reps can reach out to their regional sales director. That's kind of the first point of contact. But if for some reason they can't do that, or they feel like it needs to be escalated, it's an open channel to me. So reps reach out to me all the time with questions or with issues. And they can even reach out to the CEO of the company directly. So they can reach out to Ryan anytime they want. They can reach out to me. They can reach out to the RSDs. And then we also create a really great level of communication between members of the sales teams and by vertical market we call on. So we get a lot of people together who all call on the VA and say, well, we're running into this in Ohio, and we're running into this in Minneapolis, we're running into this in Miami. And so giving them a chance to communicate together, to collaborate on solutions. And by the way, they're the ones creating some of these solutions. And then having that bubble up to us so that we can continuously improve. You know, one of the interesting things that Ryan, the CEO, will tell a story about me when I was a rep. He said, no organization can improve without somebody being the squeaky wheel and reporting up how we can improve. And he said, Matt Rose was the squeakiest wheel. So I don't know if that was completely positive. I think it was. But certainly my drive to continuously improve how we do business, to make us more effective, I think has kind of led to me in this position. And certainly that's something that I want to foster continuously moving forward with the team.
So if I've got ways to trigger this, make it repeatable, great ways to improve it, which is really just like finding those solutions that your people are inventing in the field every day, and of course addressing the challenges that they have. Those are great things to do. And I want to make sure that I use the final element of this acronym, the M in TRIM, which is to measure it. Make sure this is a measurable system. Now, because I'm picking up in the sales process when somebody has said yes, this is going to require a little more work from me to multi-thread my conversations, to take the time to enter all my decision makers into a CRM so that I can track conversations, as opposed to just saying, all right, that's in their court now. That cuts a lot of time off my plate, but it doesn't mean I own the next step. So what do you recommend your salespeople measure to make sure that this system is working? Is it the engagement, the kind of compliance with making sure they get all their stakeholders entered in and generate conversations? Is it just top line revenue? What do you recommend I measure to make sure this system is better than what I was doing before?
I think there's a couple of things. And we, like any sales organization, I think we have a trust but verify, or inspect what you expect kind of philosophy. And certainly I think that the biggest indicator is, what is the production coming from this customer, or what is the production coming from this territory? And that certainly has to be one of the main drivers in evaluating whether or not something is working. And beyond that, we actually we employ a process where the regional sales directors will actually work with each sales rep, and we kind of pick two prospects, and we work step by step with the sales rep, working through the onboarding and implementation process. And again, it's the trust and verify process, right? So oftentimes reps get really excited about the opportunities that are in front of them, and they'll share very positive attributes to the process and feedback from customers. And ultimately, it's our job as leaders to coach them through the very specific finer points of what it means when you get a yes, and that the real work starts at that point. And here are the next steps we need to take. What steps have you taken? When are they scheduled for? Who are you speaking with? So all of those pieces that we're looking for to make sure that they're on the right track. And so those are really the measurable pieces in the onboarding process. And then obviously we're looking for that overall production number. And then certainly if you're above the line, then we're continuing to help you to build that success. If you're below the line, then absolutely we're digging in to see how we can better coach on the tactical measures that we're expected to take with every customer in order to convert them into a producing prescribing physician.
Yeah, I love the idea of measuring how often my folks are taking the next step and owning it,
Right.
rather than ever leaving that in the court of the prospect or the customer. So this is a great end-to-end system that we can use to not only own the next step, but also to take control of generating interest and enthusiasm about what we sell, because we're not leaving that to chance. We're identifying the stakeholders. We're reaching out to them. We are creating a multi-threaded conversational throughput. This is awesome, Matt. So with this system in place, I want to make sure people get a chance to use it. Where do we need to go to learn more about you, about H-Wave, about the great work that you're doing? We didn't even really get to talk a lot about what the device you sell actually produces in the lives of your customers. We kind of kept it more general, but feel free to dive into how we can get deeper in your world.
Sure. Our product is really unique. And we live in a world where there's in medicine a lot of skepticism about technology. And so if it's not mainstream, then you really do have to create what I would call an unexpectedly good outcome for patients. So our product has two settings on it. One is for pain control, and it still remains the only device on the market that can create electronic anesthesia. So it can create a local anesthetic that classes in the same effectiveness profile as like lidocaine. So you get incredibly long-lasting numbness and pain control, such that patients don't have to take oral pain medications, which have been just such a scourge on our society and in the VA and in the military. So there's a lot of benefit just to that setting, and it answers so many of the critical issues in medicine today. And it's just electronic, so we found a way to change the responsiveness of the body, so that we get these long-lasting pain relief effects. The other setting is pretty remarkable also, and it dramatically improves blood flow, activates the body's lymphatic system. And there's really only one way that the body heals, and it's to get the garbage out of the tissue and bring in whole blood and bring in the groceries, right? So you've got to get rid of tissue congestion, you've got to get rid of the inflammatory product, and then you've got to provide all of that whole blood healing product. And our product does that remarkably well. In fact, it's used in all 5 major pro sports arenas. NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL uses it across almost every team. I think every Major League Baseball pitcher uses our product. So there's a number of ways that it can be applied, whether it's in the acute injury phase or the chronic pain phase. And we find that that's, it just keeps us focused on creating remarkable outcomes for patients. You can find us on
everybody needs to be involved in. So I want to find out where do we need to go to learn more about it and to connect with you.
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Our company has a LinkedIn profile. We're pretty active on LinkedIn. We've also got a great website, hwave.com. There's tons of videos you can learn about us. You can go onto YouTube and watch a bunch of videos about H-Wave and some of the things that people have said about us. And you can always just feel free to reach out via LinkedIn, send me an email, send me a message. We'd be happy to answer any questions or dig in with you if there's anything that we can do.
Matt, thanks so much for the great sales system on how to actually generate interest in a customer or a prospect. That's something I know we all want to do more of. Definitely connect, and we'll make sure we're tagging you on LinkedIn so people can get connected with you directly on that platform. If you're watching this on the live stream, make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel. And of course, if you're listening, leave us a review. Let other salespeople know on any podcast platform, sales and hope no longer have to go together. And this podcast and the work you're doing can help alleviate that, definitely. So, Matt, thanks for serving our country, giving back to the troops with your service, and, of course, serving the sales community by showing up today and really revealing a lot about what we can all do to generate better interest, sell more, and serve more. Let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.